The global video game market is valued over $196 billion per year and is expected to grow at a rate of more than 12% each year. That's a lot of money, and it's roughly twice as much as music streaming revenue. It's no surprise that there's a lot of competitiveness when there's so much money floating about. There are legendary video games and some that have been overlooked, but this does not necessarily mean they are awful. Developers are always looking for the next Minecraft or Grand Theft Auto. However, it is a difficult business that necessitates a combination of skills, business acumen, and a little luck. Some games fail because they deserve to, they're just bad. Others fall short for a variety of reasons but are worth a second look. Here are 10 games that were a flop but are actually quite good. There are games with more complicated fighting scenarios than The Line, and when this game was released in 2012, there was a lot of competition in the third-person shooter genre. The game failed to create an impression, and sales were low. The Line's main issue was marketing. Neither the publisher, 2K Games, nor the developer, Jaeger Development, highlighted what distinguished this game from the competitors. But this time was different. Players are thrust into a morally ambiguous world in which there appear to be no right answers. This is a wonderful story that vividly depicts the hardships of war. As word spread, sales increased, and The Line continues to receive positive feedback. Many players grew up with Duke Nukem Forever. The first in the series was released in 1991. In 2011, the fourth installment, Forever, extended the series. Duke Nukem games aren't for everyone, and the teenage humor and macho culture aren't for everyone too. It's also not politically correct. The game took an astonishing 14 years to develop, earning it a Guinness World Record. Duke Nukem Forever sees our hero come out of retirement and get back to work protecting the world from an extraterrestrial invasion. Forever did not sell well. The artwork were outmoded, and the usual humor was a little strong, according to critics. There was a lot of newer things on the market, which drew away potential clients. However, die-hard Nukem fans maintain that the game isn't bad, it has everything a fan could want. This game, the eighth in the Wizardry series and the final installment of a trilogy, rose to prominence in the gaming world. Surtech, the game's developer and publisher, first released it in 2001. They left the development industry in 2003 but continued to maintain Wizardry 8, which was re-released in 2014. It received positive feedback, won several accolades, and became a commercial success. However, it took time. One issue could have been that it was the concluding installment of a trilogy. This is a risky business since the seller expects that those who purchase the first two will also purchase the third. After all, no one buys the last payment of anything. Naturally, this had a negative impact on sales. Another potential issue was that it was released 9 years after Wizardry 7, and the series had lost some momentum in the interim. Tim Schafer, the head of Double Fine Productions, stated in 2004 that his company's Psychonauts were working on what may be conservatively called the greatest game of all time, ever. That is quite a claim. Psychonauts were released in 2005, after more than 4 years of development. Microsoft approved the game in 2001 and planned to include it in an exclusive library for its Xbox platform. In 2004, the firm changed its mind and decided to make the game accessible on Windows as well. Several setbacks occurred during the development process, which everyone found difficult to deal with. When Psychonauts was ultimately released, critics adored it and it won several prizes. However, critics are not customers, and the paying public was hesitant to purchase it. Majesco, the publisher, announced a loss and stated that they would no longer be involved with console games. Double Fine acquired the rights to Psychonauts and made it available on more platforms. Sales increased dramatically, eventually reaching 1.7 million copies. Pathologic 2 had to overcome the issues that plagued the original iteration. Ice Pick Lodge, a Russian company, produced the original game in 2005, and it garnered positive reviews in Russia. The English version of this survival game, on the other hand, was not well received. The translation was weak, and the graphics were subpar, according to critics. Although some praised the overall concept and atmosphere, the general consensus was that the game, at least the English version, was clunky. Naturally, sales plummeted as a result. However, Ice Pick Lodge was confident in its idea and decided to launch Pathologic 2 in 2019. They had to crowdfund to do so. Pathologic 2 is a vastly enhanced sequel. It had to win over disgruntled original consumers, but it did so and attracted new followers. The two games are as diametrically opposed as chalk and cheese. Despite its flaws, Pathologic 1 is worth a shot. In the United States, Little Big Adventure 2 was released in 1997 as Twinson's Odyssey. Many prospective buyers dismissed it as a toy, but they should have looked again. This single-player adventure game was characterized by critics as charming, original, and intriguing. It was incredibly complex for its day and drew a cult following. It was available for MS-DOS and Windows. The game was smart, but the marketing was not. This was most likely due to Adeline Software's lack of experience. LBA was developed by a tiny team of 21 people, some of whom having only worked on one previous game. This had drawbacks, but it also allowed the team to exercise its collective imagination. The end result was a game that was quite complex at the time and still has a lot of appeal now. Okami, a Clover Studio-developed Japanese game, is a visual feast. To create an engaging world of action and adventure, the game combines Japanese folklore and folk tales from classical Japan. The game was a hit with critics, who consistently ranked it at the top of their lists. Okami won a BAFTA Games Award for Artistic Achievement for its stunning aesthetics. It was one of the last games released for the PlayStation 2 before the arrival of the PlayStation 3. Its fundamental issue was marketing. The developer failed to emphasize the game's significant strengths, and it never quite found its niche. As a result, sales of this masterwork were lackluster after its 2006 publication. Nintendo updated it, and HD versions increased sales, but many game players were still left out. Some critics still consider Okami to be a must-have for fans. Beyond Good and Evil's original version has nothing seriously wrong with it. A few reviews brought out some minor flaws, but nothing major. The game was launched in 2003 on several platforms by publisher Ubisoft, and it received positive reviews from critics. Unfortunately, the public was not convinced, and sales were so low that some retailers immediately reduced the price by 80%. Beyond Good and Evil is an excellent game. The issue was that it was not sufficiently unique to persuade individuals to add it to their collection. It is not good enough to be good enough in a highly competitive market. To make the game stand out, the designer must come up with a distinctive selling factor. Those who bought Beyond Good and Evil on the cheap were pleased with their purchase. This role-playing game succeeded well in its native Japan, but the American public reacted negatively to its 2005 release. Radiata, developed by Tri-Ace and published by Square Enix, was probably too simple for today's gaming audience. According to one observer, it would be a perfect game for a beginning. People had grown accustomed to more difficult fare by 2005. It's not a horrible game, but its makers could have done better if they had focused for a younger audience. Radiata's creators didn't spend enough time considering their intended audience, and the game ended up being stuck between two stools. This is a typical issue in the video game industry. Raised in Space, from the British publisher Conspiracy Entertainment, has become a cult favorite since its release in 2002. The issue is that cult classics do not sell well in mainstream markets. This strategy game raises the same ethical concerns as the others in the series. Critics have compared creatures to the Tamagotchi craze. If you missed Tamagotchi, it was a digital pet released by the Japanese company Bandai in 1996. Owners were responsible for their pets. Creatures had a similar idea in that players serve as carers. Fans of action games may find this unappealing. This type of game will always find a market, but it will be a little one.
Are a window into your world.
Some retailers
Listen to
immediately
every song,
began selling the
ad-free
game at a
and
discount.
uninterrupted with Spotify Premium.
It remains
Explore
tough
3
and
months for
entertaining,
free
and it
cancel
continues to
anytime.
draw
Tap
fans.
the banner to learn more.
Indeed, it's refreshing to see developers who don't immediately aim for a mass market hit.